My name is Sarah Martinez. I'm 32 years old, and I own the most sought-after wedding venue in Charleston, South Carolina, or at least I used to own it. Right now, I'm sitting in my car outside what was once my pride and joy, watching my own family celebrate without me. And honestly, I've never felt more liberated in my entire life. You're probably wondering how I got here, watching my younger sister's wedding reception through the wrought iron gates of the venue I built from nothing, the same venue I signed away 3 days ago. Let me tell you a story about family, betrayal, and what happens when you finally find the courage to stand up for yourself. 3 months ago, my sister Emma announced her engagement to her college sweetheart David. I was genuinely happy for her. She'd been talking about this guy for years, and honestly, after watching her go through a string of questionable boyfriends, David seemed like a breath of fresh air. He was stable, kind, and, most importantly, he made her laugh. Sarah, I have the most amazing news. Emma had burst into my office at Magnolia Gardens, my venue, her face glowing with excitement. David proposed, and we want to have the wedding here, of course. It's going to be perfect. I'd hugged her tight, already mentally going through my calendar to find the perfect date. Emma was my baby sister, and despite everything our family had put me through over the years, I loved her fiercely. She was one of the few people who'd supported me when I'd risked everything to buy this property and turn it into Charleston's premier wedding destination. Congratulations, Em. When are you thinking? I'll block off whatever weekend you want, I'd said, already reaching for my booking calendar. That should have been the first red flag. The way her smile faltered just slightly, the way she avoided my eyes. But I was caught up in the excitement, in the vision of my little sister walking down the aisle surrounded by our family's 100-year-old oak trees. What I didn't know then was that this wedding would become the catalyst for me to finally see my family for what they really were. And more importantly, it would force me to find my voice after 32 years of being the family's doormat. If you're watching this story unfold, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest, and sometimes the only way to heal is to walk away completely. The family dynasty. To understand what happened, you need to understand my family. The Martinez family has been Charleston royalty for 3 generations. My grandfather built a shipping empire that made us wealthy beyond most people's dreams. My father expanded it, and my mother made it her life's mission to ensure our family maintained its position in Charleston's social hierarchy. Growing up, I was always the odd one out. Emma was the beautiful one, with her delicate features and naturally blonde hair that caught the light just right. My brother Carlos was the smart one, destined to take over the family business. And then there was me, Sarah, the sturdy one, the dependable one, the one who was good with details. So, Sarah, dear, you're so practical, my mother would say, and somehow she made practical sound like a dirty word. Emma has such natural grace, don't you think? She'll make a beautiful bride someday. This narrative followed me through my entire childhood. While Emma took ballet and piano lessons, I was signed up for business classes and accounting. While Emma was encouraged to date and socialize, I was told I needed to focus on my studies. The message was clear. Emma was the princess, and I was the one who would handle the behind-the-scenes work. When I turned 25, I made a decision that shocked everyone. Instead of joining the family business like everyone expected, I used my trust fund to buy a run-down antebellum mansion on the outskirts of Charleston. The property was beautiful but neglected, with overgrown gardens and a house that hadn't been properly maintained in decades. "Sarah, what on earth are you thinking?" my mother had demanded when I told her about my purchase. "That old place is a money pit. You should be focusing on finding a nice husband, not playing around with real estate." But I had a vision. I could see what the property could become, an elegant wedding venue that captured the romantic essence of the Old South while providing modern amenities. I spent 2 years renovating, learning everything I could about event planning, horticulture, and hospitality management. The family's reaction was predictable. My father was disappointed that I wasn't joining the shipping business. My mother was embarrassed that I was playing entrepreneur instead of settling down. Carlos was dismissive, calling it a cute hobby that I'd eventually grow out of. Emma, however, was different. She'd visit the property regularly during renovations, bringing me sandwiches and sweet tea, genuinely excited about my progress. She'd help me pick out fabric swatches and paint colors, and she was the first person to book an event at Magnolia Gardens, her college graduation party. "I'm so proud of you, Sarah," she'd said that night as we watched her friends dancing under the string lights I'd hung in the garden. "You created something magical here." For a while, it felt like Emma and I were a team against the rest of the family's skepticism. She'd defend my business to our parents, and I'd include her in major decisions about the venue. When she started dating David, she'd bring him by to see the property, and he was genuinely impressed by what I'd built. But I should have known better. In my family, loyalty was conditional, and I was about to learn that lesson in the most painful way possible. The humiliation. The first crack in my perfect sister relationship appeared during Emma's engagement party. I'd offered to host it at Magnolia Gardens, naturally, and I'd spent weeks planning every detail. The garden was at its peak bloom, the catering was exquisite, and I'd even hired a string quartet to play during cocktail hour. The party was a success by every measure. Guests were raving about the venue, the food, the ambiance. I was in my element, orchestrating the evening like a conductor leading an orchestra. This was what I'd built my business on, creating perfect moments for families to celebrate their most important milestones. "Sarah, darling, you've outdone yourself," Mrs. Whitmore, one of Charleston's most prominent socialites, had told me. "This venue is absolutely stunning. I must get your card for my daughter's wedding next spring." I was beaming with pride, feeling like I'd finally proven myself to my family. But then I overheard a conversation that stopped me cold. "She's done well with this little business of hers," my mother was saying to a group of her friends. "But honestly, I worry about her. 32 and still unmarried, buried in work. It's not natural for a woman." "Well, at least she's found something she's good at," another voice replied. I recognized it as Mrs. Davidson, whose daughter had been in Emma's social circle growing up. Though I must say, Emma has always been the prettier sister, much more refined. "Oh, absolutely," my mother agreed. "Emma has such natural elegance. Sarah is, well, she's very capable, but she's always been more of a behind-the-scenes person. Not everyone can be the star of the show." I stood frozen behind the catering station, holding a tray of champagne flutes, feeling like I'd been slapped. These women were guests at my venue, at a party I'd planned and executed flawlessly, and they were discussing me like I was some kind of charity case. But the worst part was listening to my own mother agree with them, not defend me, not mention my achievements, just agree that I was the lesser sister. I managed to finish the evening with a smile on my face, but inside something had shifted. The seeds of doubt that had been planted in childhood were growing into something darker. 2 weeks later, Emma called me in tears. "Sarah, I need your help. Mom and Dad are taking over the wedding planning, and it's becoming this huge production. I just wanted something simple and elegant, but now they're talking about flying in flowers from Ecuador and hiring a celebrity chef. I listened to her vent, offering comfort and advice like I always did. Emma was the artistic one, the dreamer, and she'd always been overwhelmed by the practical aspects of event planning. I'd been looking forward to helping her create her perfect day. What if we scaled back? I suggested. Magnolia Gardens is beautiful enough that we don't need over-the-top decorations. We could focus on creating an intimate, romantic atmosphere. That's exactly what I want, Emma said, sounding relieved. Can you handle the planning? I trust you completely. I threw myself into Emma's wedding planning with the same passion I brought to all my events. I researched florists, photographers, and musicians. I created detailed timelines and backup plans. I tasted menu options and selected linens. This wasn't just another wedding. This was my sister's wedding, and I was determined to make it perfect. The photographer selection process was where everything started to fall apart. I'd narrowed it down to 3 excellent options, each with their own style and strengths. Emma loved the portfolio of James Morrison, a local photographer known for his romantic, natural light style. His work is gorgeous, Emma had said, scrolling through his website. Look at how he captures these intimate moments. This is exactly what I want. I'd scheduled a meeting with James for the following week. Emma, David, and I would meet with him at Magnolia Gardens to discuss the timeline and shot list. I was excited to show off the venue and start bringing Emma's vision to life. The meeting was going perfectly until my mother arrived unexpectedly. The breaking point. I thought I'd stop by to see how the planning is going, my mother announced, sweeping into the meeting like she owned the place. She was dressed in her usual armor of designer clothing and perfect makeup, every inch the Charleston socialite. James Morrison was in the middle of explaining his approach to wedding photography when my mother interrupted. "Excuse me, but I need to discuss something with my daughters privately." Emma and I exchanged glances. This wasn't like our mother. She usually preferred to give input from a distance, not get involved in the actual planning meetings. "Of course, Mrs. Martinez," James said politely. "I'll just step outside and take some photos of the grounds while you talk." As soon as he was out of earshot, my mother turned to Emma with a concerned expression. "Darling, I've been thinking about the wedding photos and I'm worried about the family portraits." "What do you mean?" Emma asked, confusion clear in her voice. My mother glanced at me, then back at Emma. "Well, you know how important these photos are. They'll be displayed in your home, shared with friends, possibly even featured in magazines. We need to make sure everyone looks their best." A cold dread was starting to settle in my stomach, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. "I think everyone will look beautiful," Emma said. "James's style is very flattering." "That's not exactly what I mean," my mother said carefully. "Emma, you're going to be absolutely radiant. The camera loves you, but I'm concerned about how the family photos will look overall." Emma was still looking confused, but I was beginning to understand. The dread was transforming into something sharper, more painful. "Mother, what are you trying to say?" I asked, my voice carefully controlled. My mother sighed as if she was being forced to say something unpleasant. "Sarah, dear, you know I love you, but you don't have the same natural, photogenic qualities as Emma. You're a beautiful person, but in a different way, more substantial." The word hung in the air like a physical blow. Substantial. The polite Southern way of saying I was too big, too plain, too much of everything that didn't fit the delicate Southern belle aesthetic. "I'm concerned that in the formal family portraits you might overshadow Emma in the wrong way," my mother continued. "These photos are about celebrating her beauty and elegance, and I want to make sure nothing detracts from that." Emma's mouth had fallen open. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe Sarah should consider stepping back from the formal family photos. She could still be in some of the casual shots, of course, but for the main portraits that will be displayed and shared. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. You want me to step out of my sister's wedding photos because I'm not pretty enough? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not about pretty, Sarah. It's about the overall aesthetic. You understand these things. You run a business based on creating beautiful events. Sometimes difficult decisions have to be made for the greater good. I looked at Emma, waiting for her to say something, anything, to defend me, to tell our mother that this was ridiculous and hurtful and completely unacceptable. Instead, Emma bit her lip and looked down at her hands. I don't know. I mean, these photos are really important to me. And that's when I knew. My baby sister, the one person in my family I thought truly loved and respected me, was actually considering it. She was considering removing me from her wedding photos because our mother had convinced her I wasn't elegant enough. You know what? I said, standing up from the table. You're absolutely right. I wouldn't want to ruin your perfect day. I walked out of my own venue, leaving my family to plan the wedding without me. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The discovery. That night, I sat in my home office staring at the computer screen. I'd pulled up the contract for Emma's wedding, the one I'd drawn up weeks ago when she'd first asked to use Magnolia Gardens. The document was standard for family events, a significant discount on my usual rates, flexible payment terms, and several added services at no extra charge. I'd been so excited to host Emma's wedding that I'd essentially given her a $30,000 venue package for less than $10,000. The contract was signed and dated, with Emma and David as the primary parties and me as the venue owner. It was legally binding, but there was one clause I'd included that I'd never thought I'd need to use. In the event of a material breach of respect or dignity toward the venue owner, this contract may be terminated at the venue owner's discretion with 72-hour notice. I'd added that clause after a particularly difficult client had spent weeks verbally abusing my staff and questioning every decision I made. I'd sworn I'd never let anyone treat me that way in my own business again. I'd never imagined my own family would be the ones to trigger it. But I wasn't ready to make any decisions yet. I needed to understand what was really happening here. Was this just my mother's typical manipulation? Or was there something deeper going on? I decided to do something I'd never done before. I started investigating my own family. It started with social media. I began looking through Emma's posts, her friends' posts, anything that might give me insight into what was being said about me behind my back. What I found made my blood run cold. There were photos from Emma's bachelorette party, which had happened the weekend before. Photos I hadn't seen because I hadn't been invited. In the comments, I found a thread of conversation between Emma and her friends that made everything clear. "So excited for your wedding," one friend had commented. "Magnolia Gardens is going to be perfect." "I know, right? And I'm getting such a good deal because Sarah owns it," Emma had replied. "That's so sweet of your sister," another friend responded. "Is she going to be in the wedding party?" "Well, she's planning everything, but honestly, I'm kind of worried about the photos. She's just, she doesn't really fit the aesthetic I'm going for. My mom thinks it might be better if she stays more behind the scenes." "Oof, that's awkward, but I get it. Your wedding photos are forever." "Exactly. I love Sarah, but she's more of a behind-the-scenes person anyway. She's happiest when she's organizing things." I stared at the screen, reading and rereading those words. Emma hadn't been reluctant to hurt me. She'd been actively planning to exclude me. She'd been discussing it with her friends, joking about it, treating me like some kind of inconvenient relative who needed to be managed. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was discovering that this conversation had happened 2 weeks before the meeting with the photographer. The whole scene with my mother had been orchestrated. They'd planned it, discussed it, decided together that I wasn't worthy of being in Emma's wedding photos. I scrolled further back through Emma's social media, looking for more evidence. What I found painted a picture I'd been too blind to see. There were multiple posts about the wedding planning, but in every single one, Emma talked about how blessed she was to have such a generous sister who was helping out with the wedding. She never mentioned that I was a successful business owner, that I'd built something from nothing, that I was one of the most sought-after event planners in Charleston. Instead, she painted me as the spinster sister who was just happy to be useful. In one post, she'd written, "So grateful for my sister Sarah, who is helping me plan my dream wedding. She's such a hard worker and so good at the practical stuff. I don't know what I'd do without her taking care of all the details while I focus on being the bride." The comments were full of people talking about how sweet it was that I was helping out, how lucky Emma was to have such a supportive sister. No one mentioned that I was doing this professionally, that I was providing tens of thousands of dollars worth of services at a fraction of the cost. I was being portrayed as the helpful spinster aunt, not the successful business owner who was gifting her sister an incredible wedding. But the final nail in the coffin was a conversation I found between Emma and our cousin Maria, who lived in Atlanta. "I'm so excited to see the wedding photos," Maria had written. "Magnolia Gardens is stunning." "I know, and honestly, I'm kind of relieved that Sarah won't be in most of them. I love her, but she's just not. She doesn't have the same presence as the rest of us. Mom was worried the photos would look unbalanced. That's probably smart. Wedding photos are so important." "Exactly. And between you and me, I think Sarah will be happier behind the scenes anyway. She's never been comfortable being the center of attention." I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, processing what I'd learned. My sister hadn't been reluctant to hurt me. She'd been relieved to exclude me. She'd been planning it for weeks, discussing it with friends and family, and they'd all agreed that I wasn't good enough to be in her wedding photos. But they were perfectly happy to take my money, my time, my expertise, and my venue. That's when I made my decision. The plan I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at Emma's wedding contract and making a list of everything I'd contributed to this wedding. The venue rental, $8,000, normally $15,000, coordination services, $3,000, normally $6,000, floral arrangements, $2,500 at cost, normally $5,000, catering coordination, $1,500, normally $3,000, photography location fees, waived, normally $1,000, rehearsal dinner venue, waived, normally $2,000, miscellaneous services and upgrades, $2,000, normally $4,000. Total value, $36,000 Emma's cost, $17,000 my gift to my sister, $19,000. And that didn't include the hundreds of hours I'd spent planning, coordinating, and preparing for this wedding. I'd been treating this as a labor of love, a way to show my sister how much she meant to me. But Emma and my mother had been treating it as charity from the spinster sister who was just grateful to be useful. I needed to be strategic about this. I couldn't just cancel the wedding contract in a fit of rage. That would make me look like the villain. I needed to document everything, have a clear paper trail, and give them exactly what they'd asked for. If they wanted me to be behind the scenes, invisible, not part of the family photos, then I'd take that to its logical conclusion. I spent the next day making phone calls and sending emails. I documented every slight, every comment, every indication that I was being excluded from Emma's wedding, despite being the one providing the venue and services. Then I drafted a letter to Emma and David, professionally worded and legally sound. Dear Emma and David, after careful consideration of our recent conversations about your wedding photography and family portraits, I have come to understand that my presence in your wedding is not aligned with your vision for your special day. You have expressed concerns about the aesthetic of family photos and have requested that I remain behind the scenes rather than participating as a family member. While I understand your desire for perfect photographs, I believe this fundamental lack of respect for me as both a family member and a business professional constitutes a material breach of our agreement. As per the terms of our contract, I am providing you with 72-hour notice of contract termination. This decision is based on the pattern of behavior that has made it clear that while my services are valued, my presence as a family member is not. I will, of course, assist in finding alternative arrangements for your wedding venue and services. Please let me know if you need referrals to other vendors who can provide the same level of service. Sincerely, Sarah Martinez, owner, Magnolia Gardens. I printed the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and hand-delivered it to Emma's apartment. Then I went home and waited. The phone started ringing within an hour. Sarah, what the hell is this? Emma's voice was shrill with panic. You can't cancel my wedding. I'm not canceling your wedding, I said calmly. I'm terminating our business contract based on the clause we both agreed to. You're welcome to find another venue. But the wedding is in 2 weeks. There's nowhere else available. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't elegant enough to be in your family photos. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, Sarah, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. You didn't mean what like that, Emma? You didn't mean it when you told your friends I don't fit your aesthetic. You didn't mean it when you and Mom planned to exclude me from the photos. You didn't mean it when you described me as the helpful spinster sister who's just grateful to be useful. Another silence. Then, quietly, how did you... Social media is a wonderful thing, Emma. It really shows what people think when they assume no one is watching. Sarah, please, I'm begging you. I'll fix this. I'll tell Mom that you're in all the photos. I'll make it right. It's too late for that. You've shown me exactly what you think of me, and I finally understand my place in this family. I'm good enough to provide the services, but not good enough to be in the pictures. I'm good enough to be the behind-the-scenes help, but not good enough to be treated as an equal family member. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you defended me to Mom? When was the last time you introduced me as your successful business owner sister instead of your helpful sister, who's good with details? When was the last time you treated me as an equal instead of a convenient resource? Emma was crying now, but I felt strangely calm. For the first time in my life, I was seeing clearly. I need you to understand something, Emma. This isn't about the photos. This is about respect. This is about you and Mom deciding that I'm not good enough to be a full member of this family while simultaneously expecting me to bankroll your wedding. We never said you weren't good enough. You didn't have to say it. You planned it, discussed it with friends, and orchestrated a whole scene to exclude me. The only thing you miscalculated was thinking I'd be grateful for the scraps you were willing to throw me. I hung up the phone and turned it off. I had 72 hours to prepare for the storm that was about to hit. The reckoning. The next morning, my parents were at my door at 7 a.m. I could see them through the window. My father looking uncomfortable in his business suit. My mother dressed for battle in her best Chanel. I took my time making coffee before I answered the door. Sarah Elena Martinez, my mother began the moment I opened the door. What is this nonsense about canceling Emma's wedding? Good morning, Mother, Dad. I stepped aside to let them in, though I didn't invite them to sit. I assume Emma showed you the contract termination letter. This is ridiculous, my father said, speaking for the first time. Emma is your sister. Family doesn't treat family this way. I looked at him for a long moment. You're absolutely right, Dad. Family doesn't treat family this way. That's exactly my point. Don't be dramatic, Sarah, my mother snapped. This is about those silly photos, isn't it? For heaven's sake, we can work something out. Can we? I asked. Because from where I'm standing, you and Emma have made it very clear that I'm not family enough to be in the wedding photos, but I'm family enough to provide a $36,000 wedding for $17,000. My father's eyebrows shot up. 36,000? That's the actual value of what I'm providing for Emma's wedding. The venue, the coordination, the flowers, the extras. I gave Emma a $19,000 gift because I thought she valued me as a sister. But apparently, I'm just the help. Sarah, that's not fair, my mother said, but there was less conviction in her voice now. Isn't it? Let me ask you something, Mom. How do you introduce me to your friends? What do you say when people ask about your daughters? My mother's silence was answer enough. I'll tell you what you say. You say Emma is your beautiful daughter who's getting married to a wonderful man. And you say I'm your practical daughter who runs a little business and helps with events. You never mention that I built Magnolia Gardens from nothing. You never mention that I'm one of the most successful event planners in Charleston. You never mention that I employ 12 people or that I've been featured in Southern Living magazine. Sarah, your accomplishments are... My accomplishments are embarrassing to you because they don't fit your narrative. You want Emma to be the princess and me to be the helpful servant. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded, but servants get paid for their work and I'm not being paid enough to be treated this way. My father sat down heavily on my couch. Sarah, honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Has there? Because I have screenshots of Emma's social media posts where she talks about how lucky she is to have her helpful sister taking care of the practical details while she focuses on being the bride. I have records of conversations where she and her friends discuss how I don't fit the aesthetic they want for the wedding photos. I have evidence of weeks of planning to exclude me from family photos while taking my money and services. She's your sister, my mother said weakly, and I'm hers, but apparently that relationship only goes one way. My phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. Emma. Excuse me, I said to my parents and answered the call. Sarah, please, you have to help me. Emma's voice was panicked. I've called every venue in Charleston. No one has availability for our date. I found one place in Somerville, but it's nothing like what we planned and it costs more than we have budgeted. That sounds like a problem you need to solve, I said calmly. Sarah, I'm begging you, I'm sorry. I was wrong, I was being stupid and shallow, and I'm sorry. Now, are you sorry that you hurt me, Emma? Or are you sorry that you got caught? Because there's a difference. I'm sorry I hurt you. I never meant to hurt you. But you did mean to exclude me from the photos. You did mean to treat me like hired help instead of family. You did mean to take my generosity for granted while talking about me behind my back. Yes, I'm sorry for all of that. And if I hadn't found out about it, if I hadn't seen your social media posts and overheard your conversations, you would have gone through with it. You would have excluded me from your wedding photos, taken my $19,000 gift, and never thought twice about it. Sarah, please, I love you. You're my sister. I love you too, Emma. That's why this hurts so much. I looked at my parents who were watching me intently. My father looked ashamed. My mother looked like she was calculating her next move. I'll make you a deal, I said to Emma. I'll reinstate your contract under 3 conditions. Anything, Emma said immediately. First, you pay the full market rate for the venue and services, $36,000. Sarah, we don't have... Then you find a way to get it. Loan, family loan, whatever. If you want to treat me like a vendor instead of family, then you pay vendor prices. Okay, Emma said quietly. What else? Second, you post a public apology on social media. You acknowledge that you were wrong to exclude me from family photos and that you were wrong to treat me like hired help instead of a sister. You acknowledge that I built a successful business and that I'm not just your helpful sister who's good with details. Okay, I can do that. And third, you and Mom both go to family therapy with me because this isn't just about the wedding. This is about 32 years of being treated like the lesser daughter, and I'm done with it. There was a long pause. Then Emma said, "Can I think about it?" "You have 24 hours. The 72-hour cancellation notice is still in effect." I hung up and looked at my parents. "Well?" I asked. My father nodded slowly. "Those seem like reasonable conditions." My mother's mouth was a thin line. "Sarah, this is all very dramatic. I think you're overreacting." "Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm finally reacting appropriately. I'm finally standing up for myself instead of being the family doormat." "You're not a doormat," my mother said. "Aren't I? When was the last time you asked me about my business? When was the last time you bragged about my accomplishments? When was the last time you treated me like an equal instead of Emma's helpful older sister?" My mother didn't answer. "I thought so," I said. "You have 24 hours to decide if you want to be a family or if you want to be customers." The revelation. 22 hours later, Emma called back. Her voice was different, quieter, more subdued. "Sarah, I accept your conditions, all of them." I'd been expecting this call, but I still felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and something that might have been hope. "How are you planning to pay for the venue?" I asked. "David's parents are helping with the additional cost, and Dad is contributing too. He said he should have been helping with the wedding from the beginning." That was unexpected. "Dad called you. He came to see me last night. We had a long talk. He said some things that made me realize, God, Sarah, I've been awful to you." "We all have." I waited for her to continue. "He told me about when you first bought Magnolia Gardens, about how scared you were to tell the family because you knew Mom would disapprove, about how you worked 18-hour days for 2 years to make it successful, about how proud he is of what you've built." "He never told me that," I said quietly. "He said he should have. He said he's been watching you succeed and grow, and he's been so proud, but he never knew how to say it because Mom was always dismissing what you did. And the therapy, already scheduled. Mom wasn't happy about it, but Dad told her it was non-negotiable. He said our family has some serious problems that need to be addressed." "What about the social media post?" "I already posted it. Do you want me to read it to you?" "Please." Emma cleared her throat. "I owe my sister Sarah a huge apology. I've been planning my wedding for months, and I've been treating her like hired help instead of the successful business owner and loving sister she is. Sarah built Magnolia Gardens from nothing, and it's one of Charleston's premier wedding venues. She's been featured in Southern Living magazine, employs 12 people, and has created something truly beautiful." She paused. "I've been taking her generosity for granted and treating her like she should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention I threw her way. I was wrong to exclude her from wedding photos, wrong to talk about her behind her back, and wrong to treat her like she was less important than other family members." "Go on," I said. "Sarah is not just my helpful sister who's good with details. She's a brilliant businesswoman, a talented event planner, and one of the strongest people I know. She deserves better from me and from our family." "I'm sorry, Sarah. I love you and I'm going to do better." I felt tears in my eyes. "Emma, I mean it, Sarah. I really do. I've been looking at my life and my behavior and I'm ashamed. You've been nothing but generous and loving, and I've been selfish and cruel." "Why?" I asked. "Why was it so easy to treat me that way?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. Because you let me. Because you always led us. You never stood up for yourself, never demanded better treatment, never called us out when we were wrong. We got used to treating you like the family doormat because you acted like one. It stung, but it was also true. I was trying to keep the peace, I know. But peace at what cost? You were sacrificing your own dignity to keep us comfortable. And we took advantage of that. I took advantage of that. The wedding is in 5 days, I said. Are you sure you want to go through with it? We can postpone. No, Emma said firmly. I want to get married at Magnolia Gardens, with you in every photo, because you're my sister and I love you. I want to show everyone how proud I am to be your sister. Okay? I said. I'll reinstate the contract. But Emma, things are going to be different from now on. I hope so, she said. I really hope so. After I hung up, I sat in my office and pulled up Emma's social media. Her apology post had over 200 comments, most of them supportive and kind. Several people had commented about how much they loved Magnolia Gardens and how impressive it was that I'd built the business from scratch. But the comment that made me cry was from my father. I am so proud of both my daughters, Sarah for building something beautiful and successful, and Emma for having the courage to admit when she was wrong and grow from it. I love you both. He'd never said he was proud of me before. Not publicly, not privately. Reading those words, I felt something shift in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. The next morning, my mother called. Sarah, I'd like to take you to lunch, if you're available. Why? I asked. Because I owe you an apology, a real one. And I think it's time we had an honest conversation. I almost said no, almost told her it was too late for apologies. But something in her voice stopped me. Okay, I said, but I choose the restaurant. Of course. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, far from the usual Charleston society spots where my mother might run into friends. She looked older somehow, more fragile than I'd ever seen her. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, about how I introduce you to people, about how I talk about your accomplishments, and you're right, I've been ashamed of the wrong things. I waited for her to continue. I was raised to believe that a woman's value came from her beauty and her ability to marry well. I was taught that career success was something women pursued when they couldn't find a husband. I know that sounds archaic now, but it's deeply ingrained in how I see the world. That doesn't excuse how you treated me. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. When you started your business, I was embarrassed because I thought it meant you were giving up on finding love. I thought it meant I'd failed as a mother because I couldn't help you find a husband. Mom, let me finish. I was wrong. I was so wrong. You didn't start your business because you couldn't find a husband. You started it because you're brilliant and creative, and you saw an opportunity to create something beautiful. You've built something that brings joy to hundreds of couples every year. You employ people, you support the local economy, you've been featured in magazines. You've accomplished more than most people dream of. She was crying now, and I'd never seen my mother cry before. I'm proud of you, Sarah. I'm so proud of you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were less than Emma. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough. Mom, I want to do better. I want to be the mother you deserve. I want to brag about your business to my friends. I want to show them the magazine articles. I want to be the mother who sees her daughter's strength instead of focusing on what she thinks is missing. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'd like that too. The therapy sessions, I'm nervous about them. We all are, but I think they'll help. I hope so. I don't want to lose you, Sarah. I don't want to lose my brilliant, successful, beautiful daughter because I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me. You're not going to lose me, Mom, but things have to change. I know, and I'm ready for that change. The wedding. The morning of Emma's wedding dawned clear and beautiful. I arrived at Magnolia Gardens at 6 a.m. to oversee the final preparations, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely excited about the day ahead. The venue looked stunning. The gardens were in full bloom. The ceremony space was decorated with elegant white flowers and greenery, and the reception area was set up with tables that sparkled with crystal and silver. This was what I'd built my reputation on, creating perfect moments for families to celebrate. Emma arrived at 10 a.m. with her bridesmaids, and she looked radiant. But more than that, she looked happy to see me. "Sarah," she called out, hurrying over to hug me. "Everything looks absolutely perfect. I can't believe how beautiful it is." "You haven't seen anything yet," I said, smiling. "Wait until you see the ceremony space." As we walked through the gardens, Emma's bridesmaids were taking photos and exclaiming over the beauty of the venue. But what struck me was how Emma kept introducing me. "This is my sister Sarah," she told the photographer. "She owns Magnolia Gardens. She built this whole place from nothing, and she's the most talented event planner in Charleston." "Sarah, this venue is incredible," the photographer said. "I've shot weddings all over the South, and this is one of the most beautiful properties I've ever seen." "Thank you," I said, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the morning sun. The ceremony was perfect. Emma looked beautiful walking down the aisle. David was emotional and happy, and the setting was everything I'd hoped it would be. But the moment that meant the most to me was when Emma insisted on taking photos with just the two of us. "I want a photo with my sister," she told the photographer. "My brilliant, successful, beautiful sister who made this day possible." The photographer captured us laughing together, and I knew that photo would be one I'd treasure forever. The reception was everything Emma had dreamed of. Guests were dancing under the stars, the food was delicious, and the atmosphere was magical. But what made it special for me was feeling like I was finally part of my own family. My parents spent the evening introducing me to people as their daughter who owned the venue. My father told anyone who would listen about how proud he was of what I'd built. My mother showed off photos of the magazine articles that featured Magnolia Gardens. "My daughter Sarah is featured in Southern Living," she told Mrs. Whitmore, the socialite who had previously dismissed me. "She's built one of the most successful event planning businesses in Charleston." "How wonderful," Mrs. Whitmore said, looking at me with new interest. "I had no idea you were so accomplished." "Sarah has always been modest about her success," my mother said. "But I think it's time we all started bragging about her more." During the father-daughter dance, my dad came over to me. "May I have the next dance?" We danced to an old song that had been playing at family gatherings since I was a child, and he said quietly, "I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you how proud I am of you." "It's okay, Dad." "No, it's not. You've accomplished something remarkable here, and I should have been shouting it from the rooftops. I should have been your biggest champion." "You can be now," I said. "I intend to be." Later in the evening, Emma pulled me aside. "Sarah, I have something for you." She handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a beautiful silver bracelet with an engraving. "To my sister, my hero, my inspiration." "Emma, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. I wanted you to have something to remember this day. Not just as the wedding planner, but as my sister, as the person who taught me what it means to stand up for yourself and demand better." "I'm proud of you," I said. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong and change. I learned from the best," she said. "You could have just stayed quiet and let us treat you badly forever. Instead, you stood up for yourself and forced us to be better. That's not just courage, that's love." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, I stood in the garden looking at the fairy lights and feeling something I hadn't felt in years: contentment. Not just with the successful event, but with my family relationships. "Sarah," Emma appeared beside me, having changed out of her wedding dress. Thank you for everything. For the venue, for the planning, for standing up to us when we needed it, for giving us the chance to be better. Thank you for taking that chance, I said, for being willing to change. I love you, Sarah. I love you too, Em. We stood together in comfortable silence, sisters in the truest sense of the word for the first time in years. The new beginning. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my office at Magnolia Gardens, looking at the best year my business has ever had. The bookings are up 40%, I've hired 3 new employees, and I've just been approached by a major wedding magazine to be their featured venue for next year's spring issue. But more than the business success, I'm proud of the personal growth I've experienced. I've learned to set boundaries, to ask for what I deserve, and to surround myself with people who value and respect me. The family therapy sessions have been challenging but transformative. We've addressed decades of dysfunctional patterns, and while we still have work to do, we're communicating better than we ever have. My mother has become one of my biggest champions, regularly referring clients to me and bragging about my success to her social circle. Emma and I have developed a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. She's become genuinely interested in my business and my life, and I've learned to see her as an equal rather than someone I need to protect or manage. My father and I have started having monthly dinners, just the two of us, where we talk about business, life, and everything in between. He's even expressed interest in joining Magnolia Gardens as an investor to help me expand to a second location. But perhaps the most significant change has been in how I see myself. I'm no longer the accommodating sister who accepts scraps of affection. I'm a successful businesswoman, a valued family member, and a person who deserves to be treated with respect and love. I've also started dating someone, James, the photographer from Emma's wedding. He asked me out a month after the wedding, saying he'd been impressed not just by my professionalism, but by my strength and grace under pressure. We've been taking things slowly, but I'm learning what it feels like to be with someone who values my success rather than feeling threatened by it. Sarah? My assistant's voice comes through the intercom. Your 2 o'clock appointment is here. I'm meeting with a potential client, a young woman who's been recommended by 3 different sources. As I walk to the front office to greet her, I think about how much my life has changed. The woman waiting for me is nervous but excited, clutching a folder of inspiration photos and ideas. She reminds me of myself at her age, determined, hopeful, and maybe a little naive about what she's getting herself into. You must be Jennifer, I say, extending my hand. I'm Sarah Martinez. Welcome to Magnolia Gardens. Thank you so much for meeting with me, she says. I've heard incredible things about your work. Everyone says you're the best event planner in Charleston. That's very kind. Tell me about your vision for your wedding. As we walk through the grounds and discuss her plans, I'm struck by how much I love this work. Not just the business aspects, but the opportunity to help people create meaningful celebrations with the people they love. This place is magical, Jennifer says as we stand in the garden. I can already picture our ceremony here, but I have to ask, is it true that you built this whole business from scratch? It is, I say. I bought the property 7 years ago and spent 2 years renovating it before we opened. That's incredible. I run a small catering business, and I know how hard it is to build something from nothing, especially as a woman in the South. It hasn't always been easy, I admit, but it's been worth every challenge. I hope I can build something like this someday, Jennifer says. Something that brings people joy and creates beautiful memories. You can, I tell her. But remember, success isn't just about the business. It's about surrounding yourself with people who support your dreams and treat you with respect. Don't settle for less than you deserve, in business or in life. That sounds like advice from experience. It is. I spent too many years accepting treatment I didn't deserve because I was afraid of rocking the boat. I learned that sometimes you have to be willing to walk away from what's comfortable to find what's right. Like canceling your own sister's wedding? I smile. You heard about that? It's kind of legendary in the wedding planning community. People talk about it as the moment Sarah Martinez showed everyone she wasn't going to be taken advantage of anymore. It wasn't easy, I say, but it was necessary. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means forcing people to treat you better. And it worked out better than I could have imagined. My sister and I have a stronger relationship now than we've ever had. My whole family does. But more importantly, I have a stronger relationship with myself. As we finish the tour and discuss the details of Jennifer's wedding, I feel grateful for the journey that brought me here. The pain of that confrontation with my family was real, but it led to something better. Authentic relationships based on mutual respect and love. Later that evening, I'm having dinner with James when my phone buzzes with a text from Emma. Just saw your interview in Charleston Living magazine. I'm so proud of you. Love you, sis. The interview came out this morning, a feature on successful women entrepreneurs in Charleston. In it, I talked about building magnolia gardens, but also about the importance of knowing your worth and demanding to be treated accordingly. Good news? James asks, noticing my smile. The best kind, I say, showing him the text. A year ago, I never would have imagined my sister would be proud of me for standing up for myself. And now? Now I have a family that sees me for who I really am, a business that I love, and, I pause, looking at him across the table, someone who makes me laugh every day. You're pretty amazing, Sarah Martinez, he says. I'm glad you finally see it too. As we walk back to my car, I think about the woman I was a year ago, the one who was willing to accept being excluded from family photos as long as she could keep the peace. That woman is gone, replaced by someone who knows her worth and isn't afraid to demand it. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is refusing to accept their poor treatment. Sometimes love means setting boundaries that force people to choose between changing their behavior or losing you. I chose to risk losing my family to save myself, and in the process, I saved us all. If you're reading this story and recognizing yourself in it, I want you to know that you deserve better. You deserve to be valued, respected, and loved for who you are. You deserve to have your accomplishments celebrated, not dismissed. You deserve to be in the pictures, not hidden behind the scenes. And if the people in your life can't see that, maybe it's time to show them. Maybe it's time to remove your name from the contract and see what happens. Trust me. You might be surprised by how much better life can be when you finally decide you're worth fighting for. The end of this story isn't really an ending at all. It's a beginning. The beginning of a life lived on my own terms, surrounded by people who see my worth and celebrate it. It's the beginning of a future where I never have to hide behind the scenes again. And that, I think, is the best wedding gift of all.